The weather outside has been so weird. It's cold and then it's warm and then it's cold and I don't even know. Today we are going to talk about my past, present, and future of books. What I've been reading, what I'm in the middle of, and what I'm going to get into. So let's get into it right now. Recently, I finished the book called Mothman Haze by E.C. Hansen, and I am a huge Mothman fan. So if you give me a book that's about Mothman, I'm going to probably want to read it. You know, even though last month we finished our cryptid readathon, I still feel the need to read more about cryptids because I love them. Mothman Haze is this story that follows the main character. She kind of is like, doesn't really like express emotions that well. She is definitely horny. Yeah, that's the thing. Very horny in this. I feel like I have to mention that because the main character is freaking horny, which makes it funny. And the story is pretty intense. Her nephew was kidnapped, and her dad is like, thinks that he saw the nephew be kidnapped by Mothman. This sparks a weird and tumultuous little story that's in this novella about, was her nephew really kidnapped by Mothman? And the nephew her parents take care of, it was her sister's kid, and her sister had passed away. Her nephew was kind of a butthead, is what it sounds like. Sounds like the kid was kind of, you know, troubled and kind of a pain in the beep boop. You follow this whole story of them trying to figure out, was it some weird otherworldly creature, or was it, you know, just a normal kidnapping? Did the dad of the kid maybe take him, or, you know, some stranger, or who knows? It's weird, it's sad, it's emotional. I don't know, it was a really gripping and addictive read. I liked it quite a bit. So what we're currently in the middle of right now is The Star and the Strange Moon by Constance Sayers. And this is about like a haunted film. It follows this film star, Gemma Turner, and kind of her rise and fall and what was going on with her. And like, she was on the up and up, and she was doing all these surf films and was super popular. And then she decided, you know, she wanted to stretch her talent. She didn't want to be typecast. And so she starts doing some other films, and those kind of flopped and didn't go so well. So, and a lot of the blame got laid on her. So she gets the chance to work with this like up and coming French director, Thierry Valdon. He makes films that are just weird and strange and shown mainly at nighttime. And so she goes to this interview with him about this film that's a horror film that features vampires and whatnot. She ends up getting the part. While the filming is happening, she ends up disappearing on set about 10 days into filming. And then you also have, you're following the other storyline of this kid, and his name is Christopher. Him and his mom, in the beginning of the story, they kind of live this transient life and bounce around to different hotels and motels. And she's a singer, and she sort of makes a living doing that. They get this new gig, things are looking up. They go to this hotel where they're going to be staying, while she's doing this gig for a month or so. And when they walk down the hallway, there's these pictures of all these old movie stars and whatnot. And they get to this one, and it's of this movie star, Gemma Turner. And this is like many, many years in the future, right? So you have like the Gemma stories kind of in like the past, in like the 60s and whatnot. And then you have current times, it's like the mid 80s when he was a kid. So there's this picture in the hall of Gemma Turner, and the mom sees it and freaks the F out. She takes like a nail polish from her purse and throws it at him, and then she just destroys this picture, rips it off the wall, and like freaks the F out. He's like, Mom, we gotta go. Kid's like 10. And then they go to the hotel room. And it's kind of obvious there were the only people in the hallway, so that she did this. And so for 3 days, she like lays in bed as comatose and not really responding. And he's just in there with her. And eventually there's pounding on the door. And they basically break down the door, and they end up taking the mom away. And they're like, hey, do you have a dad or family or whatever? And he's like, my Aunt Wanda, and he had her phone number. So he ends up going to stay with his aunt, and then his mom just never recovers from that. And so his whole life, he's trying to figure out what was the connection with this Gemma Turner lady that made his mom like lose her freaking mind. What was it? And so far, this book is awesome. It's so weird. And it was labeled at the library like a sci-fi fantasy, but it's also horror. It's all of that. It's so many things. It's one of those hard to categorize books, I guess, because yeah, there's elements of definitely horror and there's elements of fantasy. And I guess I could see how there's a little bit of sci-fi too. Not so much sci-fi as more fantasy horror. And it's dark and disturbing and weird. And so far, I am loving it. All right. So what we're going to get into, here we go. Got this book because Mother Horror said it was good. And if Mother Horror said something's good, usually I like to check it out because Sadie's got like the best taste. And that is The Reformatory by Tannereve Due. I'm very excited to read this. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about this. Let's go. Story time with Sin. Gracetown, Florida, 1950. 12-year-old Robbie Stevens Jr. is sentenced to 6 months at the Gracetown School for Boys for kicking the son of the largest landowner in town in defense of his older sister, Gloria. So begins Robbie's journey further into the terrors of the Jim Crow South and the very real horror of the school they call the Reformatory. Robbie has a talent for seeing ghosts, or haints. But what was once a comfort to him after the loss of his mother has become a window into the truth of what happens at the Reformatory. Boys forced to work to remediate their so-called crimes have gone missing, but the haints Robbie sees hint at worse things. Through his friends Redbone and Blue, Robbie is learning not just the rules, but how to survive. Meanwhile, Gloria is rallying every family member and connection in Florida to find a way to get Robbie out before it's too late. And I'm looking forward to reading that. Okay, so next up we have The Vulnerables by Sigrid Nunez. This book caught my eye. I liked the weird cover. Upside down parrot with flowers. La fleur de blurb. What does that even mean? La fleur de blurb? I don't know why I say things. The fleur obviously is the flower. I don't know what the blurb is. Let me tell you a little bit about this book. Elegy plus comedy is the only way to express how we live in the world today, says a character in Sigrid Nunez's 9th novel. The Vulnerables offers a meditation on our contemporary era as a solitary female narrator asks what it means to be alive at this complex moment in history and considers how often our present reality affects the way a person looks back on their past. Humor, to be sure, is a priceless refuge. Equally vital is connection to others, who here include an adrift member of Gen Z and a spirited parrot named Eureka. The Vulnerables reveals what happens when strangers are willing to open their hearts to each other and how far even the smallest acts of caring can go to ease another's distress. A search for understanding about some of the most critical matters of our time. Nunez's new novel is also an inquiry into the nature and purpose of writing itself, and I thought that sounded pretty fantastic, so I'm looking forward to reading that. I do like to read stuff that's not always just horror or fantasy, and this one sounds pretty great. Alright, so this next one, this was like impulse grab. It's called Hazardous Spirits by Ambara Salam. And this, I guess, is a historical fiction. At least that's what the sticker tells me. That's what the library says. I don't make the rules. I don't know. So this one takes place in the 1920s in Edinburgh, Scotland. And it says, Evelyn Hazard is a young middle-class housewife living the life she's always expected until her husband Robert upends everything with a startling announcement that he can communicate with the dead. Oh, really, Robert? Really? Can you? The couple is pulled into the spiritualist movement, a religious society of mediums and psychics that emerged following the mass deaths of the Spanish flu and the First World War. And Evelyn's carefully composed world begins to unravel. And then, when long-held secrets from her past threaten to come to the surface, presenting her with the prospect of losing all she holds dear, Evelyn finds herself unable to avoid the question, is the man she loves a fraud, a madman? Or, most frighteningly, is he telling the truth? Cloaked in the moody, beguiling backdrop of a 20th century Scotland, Ambara Salam's Hazardous Spirits brings a sparkling sense of period detail and dry humor to the life of a young woman whose world is unsettled by mediums and spirits, revealing the devastating secrets that ghosts from the past can tell when given the voice to do so. And well, yeah, I love ghosts and spooky things, so I thought this one sounded pretty fun. I'm excited about all of these books. Let's go. Reading a new book, I get so excited. I don't know what it is. A new story to explore, an adventure to be taken, an escape to be had. In the dark days and cold nights of winter, you can go into a book and explore this other land. I don't know. It's just exciting. I love books. I've never really thought about that before. Like, I'm always like, I'm so excited to read this because I am. I never look at a book and I'm like, dang, this is going to be a drag. It's never a drag until the story is a drag, and then I just usually DNF it because I don't want to read something I'm not enjoying. I used to feel bad about DNFing. I don't really anymore. Life is too short to read something that you're just not, you know, clicking with and all that good stuff. So that's what I've been up to lately in the world of books with Sin. What have you guys been reading? What has been something that's been really awesome that stood out to you? Let me know down in the comments. If you're a fan of videos where I talk about multiple things that I'm reading, the next video coming up will be about that. So stick around, check it out. And if you had fun hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.